Hello everyone, welcome back to Beyond the Veil Tarot and Astrology. My name's Candace. Thank you guys so much for joining me. Happy Thursday. Back at it with you with another video, and today we're talking all things Mercury in Pisces. If you guys like my content, you want to see more of it, make sure you guys subscribe to the channel, click that bell button below so you can see more of my content on Tuesdays, Thursdays, Fridays, and Sundays, where I use tarot and astrology to make sense of what's going on in the cosmos. All right, well, this is going to be a part one, and you guys know usually what I do is when we see a Mercury retrograde coming up, I always talk to you guys about it in the ingress video, and I try to get you before we get into the Mercury retrograde pre-shadow. So in this video today, we're going to talk all about Mercury in Pisces, what it means, what to expect, and why we are going to have Mercury in this sign for such a long period of time. Now, obviously, I'm excited to do this deep dive. I think this is a very interesting Mercury retrograde kind of period that we're going to be looking at. It's given me major deja vu back to spring of 2025, where we saw a Mercury retrograde in this sign, and we also saw a Venus retrograde in this sign with a Virgo eclipse. So think back to what was kind of happening, and we're going to do a deep dive and kind of talk a little bit about what the next couple of months mean with this Mercury transit. Hopefully you guys are going to be able to tap into the spiritual side of it and hear some of those whispers where Mercury is guiding all of us. Now, if you're new here, please don't only subscribe, but drop your rising sign below. Say hello in the comments. Give me a thumbs up if you like this video. Consider sharing it on your socials. While you're there, follow me on X at BTVAstro for more of my kind of astro ramblings and things that I'm always kind of posting about. And obviously share it with like-minded astro friends so we can grow the community. Any interaction with the channel really helps the channel grow, and we're getting closer and closer to 50K, so I hope we can get there soon. So today we're going to talk all about Mercury in Pisces. Like I said, this is part one of the pre-retrograde shadow, and this is that dreamy, mystical, magical, intuitive sign, right? Pisces, 12th sign of the Zodiac, traditionally ruled by Jupiter. Modern day ruler is Neptune. And honestly, this is going to be quite the ride because we're going to be seeing this while we're in between eclipses, and we're going to see Mercury kind of do its backwards dance at the end of February, clear into March. Basically, what we're going to be kind of taking a look at is what intuitive shifts are happening with Mercury in this sign. If you guys didn't already know, Mercury will retrograde 3 times this year, and it's going to be happening in all of the water signs. So first, this is the first one for 2026, taking place pretty much into February into March. We'll see another one in June and July in Cancer, and then there is a wicked one that's going to happen in the fall in October and November, while Venus retrogrades as well in Scorpio back into Libra. But right now, I think we're focusing on February 2026, and trust me, this is stirring up some profound soul level stuff. Now remember, Mercury is the messenger. He's the god that can go in between worlds. So he is able to go to the heavens, talk to the gods. He can go and hang out with Hades. He can bring us messages to us mortals here on Earth. And he deals with communication, right? So he deals with systems and commerce and trade, everything from gadgets to cars, as well as anything that allows us to connect, communicate, and also learn. So we're going to see that Mercury typically has like this kind of quicksilver mental vibe, but it is kind of going against the waves in Pisces. This is actually a sign where it has some challenge because it's obviously in the opposition of Virgo, where it's typically at home. It's also in the square position of, to Gemini, which is another one of Mercury's home signs. And it's not logical, I'll say that, but it is very poetic. And this is a time where the collective dreams are going to be off the chain. You guys are going to start seeing some really weird dreams. You're going to probably start feeling like you're tapping into something. So I'm excited to kind of see how that manifests. Now, obviously in mundane astrology, it's a little different because Mercury is not just about how we communicate and talk to each other. It's about commerce. So think businesses, stores, transactions. Mercury also is directly connected to media and negotiations, as well as how info flows throughout society. So think like news cycles, contracts, and everyday exchanges. Pisces, on the other hand, is the realm of dreams. It's about intuition, spirituality, compassion, and kind of the collective unconsciousness. Pisces rules art, things like music, healing, but also escapism and anything that kind of blurs the boundaries where reality meets kind of the ethereal. It's also about screens, okay? So what we watch, movies we watch, things that also kind of bring up deja vu come up a lot in this sign. Very poetic, very creative, I will say, very intuitive. And I think that we are going to see quite a few interesting kind of aspects that are going to be happening with the first round of Mercury going through Pisces before it turns retrograde. And there can actually be some really good things that can come from it, especially with its trine to Jupiter in Cancer. Now, if we think about Mercury, moving through Pisces, first of all, it's in detriment. So like I said, it's kind of like in some uncomfortable kind of vibes. This means that it's not able to express the more analytical, organized, kind of like methodical side that Mercury typically likes to have. So it means that, it's not able to access facts or logic, clear lines like Gemini and Virgo like to draw. But in Pisces, it's trying to kind of pin down a cloud, right? So it's hard to kind of remember that thought, figure out that dream, figure out what the hunch is. And thoughts do turn poetic. It can be more intuitive, but it's also very foggy. It's very common when we see Mercury retrogrades or Mercury transits through the sign that miscommunications can happen because we have a tendency to be either speaking from the heart, maybe there is afraid or a fear to kind of speak up. We can also see that it can be about us kind of trying to translate the messages that are kind of coming from our subconscious, not necessarily the head. Pisces is the spirit, and it's also the spirit world. So what's fun about these transits is that we can see it's an excellent time for divination. It's wonderful to get readings. It's great to tap in and meditate. It's great to take a little bit of time to maybe try to decode our dreams and see what they mean. Maybe you guys heard in a previous video, I was talking about how I always observe people talk about, man, I had crazy dreams. And it's been generally when the moon's been going through Pisces. But now that Mercury is going into Pisces, we're definitely going to be feeling like we're tapping into something on the other side. Now, these miscommunications can kind of happen not only because we are misunderstanding or they're kind of getting lost in translation, but it can also be because we don't really know fact from fiction. This is a sign that deals strongly with Neptune, and what you're going to see throughout this Mercury and Pisces transit is that Saturn will be coming into conjunction with Neptune, and probably the phrase that we're going to see a lot over the next month or two is, that can't be real. There's no way that's possible, or I don't know why, but I just have this feeling. And you guys are going to find that that's going to be coming up a lot online in conversations, and it's going to be like a conspiracy theorist kind of like playland. But I do think that, really what this particular transit has kind of taught me is that we find ourselves maybe daydreaming when Mercury's in Pisces, or maybe picking up on unspoken vibes or kind of channeling some kind of artistic kind of inspiration. Just watch for confusion, watch for white lies. Also, I think those white lies kind of come up because of that connection to Jupiter retrograde in Cancer, where we're trying to spare people's feelings. And we can get lost in some of the vagueness. We can get lost in some of the kind of compassionate smoothing over or manipulation of words. It's like the veil starts to thin and it's letting some of those subtle messages kind of come in from beyond. But they can be really hard to translate or kind of interpret. We can also see that we're getting lost in translation. There could be things that are falsely represented or edited, or things that are being translated in a way that doesn't make sense. Pisces does deal with the collective. So it talks about what's going on with global trade, global market, videos that might be in other languages that are being falsely kind of edited or interpreted as well. Now, when we connect Mercury in the skies, there's only really one planet that it is connected to right now, and that's Jupiter. And that's because Jupiter is the dispositor of obviously anything that's in Pisces. So for the last few moments, Saturn, obviously the North Node, and Mercury. And we also tie Mercury to the South Node. So South Node transits have been interesting to kind of watch, or any Mercury transits has that connection to the South Node, because whenever we're dealing with like a Mercury retrograde now, at least while the South Node is still in Virgo, it's going to be kind of going through the sign that is going to be on the same axis as where we have been having eclipses since last year. Now, when I think about this, I'm like, okay, South Node is the past. It's things that are kind of coming back up or being revealed or reevaluated or reassessed. It can mean that there is this releasing or kind of letting out of information, or letting go of bad habits, or release of maybe outdated ways of working, or changes with us being a little bit too much of like a perfectionist. And Mercury, that's Mercury's home turf, right? Virgo. So when we think about the South Node release, it's also going to be talking about karmic implications. It's also about what we're letting go of. South Node in Virgo was about dropping that perfectionism, over-analysis, potentially being a little nitpicky. And Mercury entering Pisces, while it's opposing that Virgo energy, is heading towards a conjunction with the North Node, which we're going to see a couple times. Now, with Mercury going through the same sign as the North Node, it's really kind of pushing back and opposing that Virgo vibe. And it's asking us to balance the sharp details with like bigger picture intuition. It's also like saying, okay, stop overthinking every little thing, trust and kind of go with the flow. Now that can be positive because we could actually get a lot more done if we're just intuitively navigating our lives by listening to our emotions and our intuition. But it could also be this sense of kind of like, hurry up, don't ask any questions, like let's just move along, we can kind of distort things and manipulate things and make it look like, there's nothing going on. But Pisces is like Oz behind the velvet curtain, right? Pulling all of the strings and the stuff that's kind of going on. So watch for a tendency to notice that stuff can get amplified. It can be blown out of proportion. We can also see that there is destined information, news, media, and like stories, or I guess I would say like headlines that are starting to come out that people have been doubting, or people have been saying, no, there's no way that would happen, or that's not real. We may also see that it's going to be impacting anything that deals with health, obviously South Node in Virgo, job numbers, the global economy, global trade, a global trade slowdown, knowing that Mercury is going to go retrograde. And Pisces deals with organized religion. We can also hear that there is a lot of people who are kind of stepping away or moving away from hospital jobs, prison jobs, anything that deals with psychiatric wards. Lots of news or stories that are kind of starting to come out that is connected to international travel, immigration, policies connecting to immigration, as Jupiter is ruling that. Jupiter is going to be about laws and policies. So it could be about like, where certain places are restricting or limiting travel, where extra, passport information, visa, biometrics, photos, scans, and things are going to start being kind of required. And I do think that it's going to get interesting because this connection is really amplifying, I think, the need to kind of release these tendencies to want to be too particular for something a little bit more fluid and healing. But there's always a little bit of scandal that comes up with Neptune, so we'll see what manifests. In terms of Jupiter, with Jupiter's kind of connection to Mercury being in Pisces, Jupiter is also, in Cancer. It's been there for several months. It's going to be there until the summer, and it's retrograde right now. But what you're going to see in March is that Jupiter is going to go direct. And there will be a time where Jupiter will be direct and Mercury are going to be direct, and they're going to be starting to come into a trine with each other. That's one of the aspects that I'm going to talk about. I think it's actually very fortuitous, especially if you're listening to your gut. It's going to probably end up steering you in the right direction. And effects-wise, Jupiter's influence here is huge because Jupiter is big. It's a gas giant. Jupiter is obviously exalted in Cancer. So what it represents here, at least until March 10th, is that there is going to be this sense of needing to reflect on the past. And Cancer can be our home, our roots, our heritage. It can also mean our families, our living situation, our countries. So it's very expansive. It's very emotional when it's in Cancer. When Mercury enters Pisces, it's going to start forming a conjunction first to the North Node. Then it's going to start coming into a trine with Jupiter. And you're going to find that with Mercury and Pisces forming this beautiful aspect, a trine is flowing, right? That we can actually see right around February 16th at 15 degrees. We are just feeling very tapped in. We are feeling very connected. We are feeling very kind of divinely channeling some stuff. People are going to get super religious. They're going to get super spiritual. That's what happens generally when we see Pisces and kind of Jupiter things happening. So prayer, reading spiritual text, scripture, meditation, some people going to church, temple, any of those things is positive. And I think it's actually going to kind of keep us a little bit more emotionally kind of in alignment. It could also mean that there could be some good news that could be coming, right? So receiving good news, Jupiter is positive, Mercury is communications, from home, from family, good news involving travel. And you'll see that trine that's going to happen, I think, about 2 separate times. Now, what also is kind of cool is that when Mercury starts to come into conjunction with the North Node and then hit that trine, it is the exact same degree as September 2025's lunar eclipse in Pisces. So you got to go back and look. It was like 15 or 16 degrees, I think. But we had a lunar eclipse that was in Pisces, and yeah, we're going to be almost feeling like there's deja vu and things from some of those periods that are kind of coming back up. So it's kind of like a cosmic callback. So I think it's interesting that the South Node represents the past. Mercury is saying, hey, something needs to be unveiled so we can move towards the future. We're trying to get clarity about some of these matters, or kind of marinating on how we feel about what's kind of changed globally. And then we're going to be watching Mercury turn retrograde. The trine is just so beneficial because it's really blending this energy of Mercury's more mental magic with Jupiter's abundance, its faith, its growth, its kind of like nurturing qualities as well. Now in water signs, this expansion is not always seen physically. That's the one thing that you guys want to kind of watch for. If it was an air trine, it'd be more kind of intellectual communication. If it was a fire trine, it would be like really active and dynamic. But water trines are a little bit more subtle. They require more empathy. There is much more intuitive wisdom that comes from a trine to Jupiter. It can be great for healing family karma or anything in regards to our home. Creative breakthroughs can happen. Spiritual breakthroughs can happen. And while Jupiter is retrograde, it means it's turning inward. So it means that it's kind of reflecting on our own roots, or in your own chart, you got to see where Cancer is. It can also mean emotional security and how to kind of nurture our inner world. Why is it beneficial? Well, it's going to soften some of the energies of Mercury's kind of foggy side, bringing, dreams, precognitive visions, things we're seeing in meditation, intuitive downloads, compassionate conversations, and I think opportunities to heal old emotional wounds. I think that fortune's going to favor the bold for those who trust their gut in the next month or two. But like I said, heads up, Mercury will be entering its pre-retrograde shadow pretty soon, and that's actually going to start on February the 11th at 8 degrees of Pisces. So as you guys are watching this now in early February, we still have Mercury going through Aquarius. So in theory, we really have until Mercury goes into the shadow around the 11th that we can kind of get our affairs in order. We can get everything ready before we go into the Mercury retrograde. But I'm of the frame of mind that some of the Mercury squares from Aquarius to Taurus is a little destabilizing. It feels a little frantic. I'm actually going to use the Mercury retrograde, I think, in a beneficial way, where I'm going to first watch what happens when Mercury hits the North Node, see as it starts coming into a trine with Jupiter. I'm going to feel it out. I'm going to go, well, do I make changes during this period? Or, is my gut or my intuition telling me to wait? And then I'll wait for the second trine that's going to be coming later in March. Now, the pre-shadow means that Mercury will be coming into the degrees which it will retrograde back to. And that's that sneaky phase that we see on the beforehand, before the Mercury retrograde, and we also see it in the post, where we're waiting for Mercury to kind of either enter or exit the degrees which it will retrograde through. I pay attention to this because Mercury obviously is a bit debilitated here, so it doesn't really have its sea legs, I guess pun intended, and it's still trying to kind of transmute some of the information and the communication that's kind of coming in. What we'll find is that there are themes that will resurface during the retrograde that's going to start bubbling up. So pay attention to conversations, ideas, and plans basically between, I would say, now and the 25th of February when Mercury actually starts its retrograde in Pisces. Likely, they'll need some kind of revisiting. It's going to be confusing. We're not going to be able to make sense of stuff. Things are going to seem unreal. Definitely be aware of like misreads. You can definitely see some delays in travel, particularly international travel. We can also see there can be issues with travel by water, so issues with ships, problems with cruises. And we can also see some major kind of rearrangements or reworkings of things that are connected to hospitals and like private spaces. Now, I also want you guys to really think about how, that connection to your intuition is important, because if something feels a little off kilter, likely if we listen to that, we're going to be better prepared to kind of pivot while the retrograde is happening. Right now is prep time. So it means that in order to prep, first of all, pull out your chart, right? Look at what house Pisces is in. That is the same place where you saw Mercury retrograde last spring, you saw a Venus retrograde last spring, you saw a Pisces eclipse that's happened last fall, and now you're going to be seeing another Mercury retrograde in this sign. So likely we know how this goes. I really feel like, we're going to have to lean into what our gut is telling us, but I always like to, going into the retrograde shadow, the pre-shadow, I back up my data. I make sure that I have all my important documents signed or everything that's saved. I also make sure that, you know, I'm just checking on the houses that Mercury rules in my chart because I know there's going to be some kind of shift or something that's going to happen. It's good to clarify intentions, read the fine print, and maybe avoid any major contracts if you can with this one until Mercury goes direct. And likely, I think, because of the trines to Jupiter, there's going to be some positive shifts and things that are going to kind of take place. Now, Mercury won't go retrograde in Pisces till February 25th, and that'll be at 22 degrees. So if you have anything from about 7 to 23 degrees of Pisces, Sun, Moon, Rising, or a personal planet, you're going to be going through the Mercury retrograde. It's going to be very personal for you. It won't station direct until March 20th, and that's going to be at 8 degrees of Pisces. This retrograde is all about introspection. I think that the North Node in Pisces has taught us that, Saturn in Pisces has taught us that, Neptune in Pisces has taught us that. And it's so fascinating to watch this cycle and how similar it was to last year. You know, Venus went retrograde from Aries back into Pisces. Mercury went retrograde from Aries back into Pisces. And so it represented that turning within, kind of that invitation to really start working with and dancing with the North Node that went into Pisces this last year. But now we're seeing it finalize as all these planets are going to be now kind of getting ready to leave Pisces. Saturn and Neptune will leave, Mercury will retrograde, and then by the time we're getting to the end of March, going into April, where the real astrological new year begins, we're just about done with all of this confusion. We're feeling like we're finally kind of coming out of the fishbowl where everything has been like smoke and mirrors and just kind of like confusing. I also think that we're reviewing our dreams, our spiritual beliefs. There can be hidden mental blocks that are being kind of shown to us. And Pisces is super psychic, right? So anybody who's got, you know, Mercury in the 12th house or 12th house stellium, Mercury-Neptune aspects, you know that you sometimes just know things, but you don't know why. And I think that old memories might be kind of coming back a lot for people. They might find that they're looking at old photos, old videos, old movies. They're feeling very, it's like Six of Cups energy. You're just feeling like you're very much reminiscing about the past, especially with that tie to the South Node. And past life vibes, past life meditation, any kind of shamanic work can definitely be really helpful. I think a lot of people are going to be finding that there's a lot of unspoken truths that are now starting to also kind of float up to the surface. The one thing you want to watch for is Mercury can be directly tied to our mental capabilities, our mind, how we're thinking, how we're talking. Certainly Pisces can be dealing with drugs, addiction, alcohol, people who are feeling mentally unwell. So we do have a tendency to see people that are kind of going back and forth being like, oh my gosh, I just don't know if I can just deal with reality, and they just want to escape. Be very careful with that with this particular transit, especially with the tie to the South Node. I do think if we see a lot of people who are experiencing job loss, health issues, damning news and information that's coming out regarding some of these topics, it's going to be very sensitive for some people to kind of deal with. I do think that there's going to be some stuff that's going to come out in the media as well that people are going to have a really difficult time hearing or watching or just kind of processing. I do think that there is this tendency to just want to go and run and hide under the covers when we see retrogrades in Pisces because it wants to hide, it wants to escape. And things don't necessarily need to be drug or alcohol. It could be that we just can't get out of bed, we're just excessively binging Netflix or watching TV. We can't get off of our phones, and there is kind of like this rose-colored glasses that can kind of be coming up in relationships. There's going to be a lot of hype and spin. There's going to be a lot of things that are going to be coming out that seem very kind of conspiracy-esque, I think, that are going to be trying to distract people. And I want you guys to just kind of keep that in mind. There's also a lot of things that are going to be starting to kind of come out to get emotional reactions out of people, to get people very emotionally charged. Now let's read the Sabian symbol for 8 degrees, because this is where it's actually going to be going into the pre-shadow. This is what it will retrograde back to in March. And it's going to be Pisces 9 that I'm reading for you guys. And Pisces 9 is a jockey. The keyword is practice. The theme is going for broke. The symbol speaks to the requirement that an individual throw himself into life, hone his skills and talents, and make every effort his best if he wishes to stand in the winner's circle. The image of a jockey emphasizes competition, maneuvering, position, or advantage. The implication here is that the individual who sloughs off or fails to give his best shot will lose out in the long run. At its highest, it represents persistence, tenacity, a remarkable gift for coming from behind to win the game of life. Watch for foolish risk-taking or and a love of gambling. I think that's the Jupiter influence. The accent is on competition skill and being able to maneuver yourself in the best position to get what you want. The opportunity, your greatest advantage lies in practicing what you would like to be good at. Be willing to sacrifice immediate pleasure for long-term gain. Guard against being overly confident or trusting your luck to bring you success. Don't take things for granted or exhaust your resources before they can be replaced. Stepping stones are competition, contest, match, rivalry, race, game, maneuvering, coordination, orchestration, dexterity, agility, equilibrium, and lightness, smallness. And obviously, everyone's favorite, gambling. That's the 9. That's that influence of Jupiter, because Jupiter likes to take risks and do that stuff. Well, I mean, I think it's kind of like more or less, giving it your best shot, and if you really want something to happen, what you have to do in order to make that take place. I lived in Las Vegas for a couple of years. It was fun. It was fun while it lasted. I was living there with my husband right when I left LA. We were living really close to the Strip, and I used to just love going out and gambling. I've got, Aquarius North Node of the 5th. And so it reminds me a lot of that it's just like you have to be willing to take risks and play the game of life. And I remember while I was living there, I read an article that was saying that they did studies on people who were professional gamblers or people who would regularly gamble. And that they found it was a pretty good odd that the people who would jump up and celebrate their winnings before they actually won were much more likely to win games of chance. Isn't that interesting? So you're playing slot machine, maybe you're playing poker. It doesn't matter what you're playing, but the people who were celebrating their win and getting into the vibe of winning before it happened were likely to kind of get into that flow of abundance. That's what this reminds me of, okay? So I'm not saying fake it till you make it, but I'm telling you that you guys have to start really thinking about, if I'm gonna be the best, what's it gonna feel like? If I'm gonna have my dreams manifest, what is that gonna feel like to be standing on that stage or to be in the winner's circle or to be able to kind of reach that peak? Everything's about emotions, because where intention flows and emotion flows, that's where the energy goes. And that's how you really want to work with some of the trines that you're going to be seeing during this particular, Mercury transit. As for who's going to be hit the hardest, obviously Pisces, sun, moon, and risings. If you have anything from about, I would say, 7 to 23 degrees, you're going to be impacted by the Mercury transit. I will take you guys through the 12 rising signs so you can kind of see where this is going on. Also, anybody who's ruled by Mercury, so my Virgo and my Gemini risings, you guys are connected to Mercury, so your chart ruler being on the move and changing signs is significant. The retrograde coming in is significant, especially because, well, you guys are all immutable signs, so it's either going to be in your sign as a Pisces or it's going to be squaring or opposing you for the other two, because it's going through angular houses. Pisces risings are going to find this is more about an identity shift, expression shift, maybe relationship shifts. Geminis, it's going to be more about career and your public image. And then Virgos, it's going to be more about your partnerships and your one-on-one relationships. I think to prepare for this Mercury transit, really ground yourself with anything that's going to help bring a little bit of mental clarity and stability, right? So meditation, journaling, dreams, these are all great things in the Pisces area. Herbal baths for clarity, staying hydrated, spas, saunas, soaks, all of that stuff is great. But also it's about recognizing and realizing that there are some things that we do behind closed doors in private that's not actually good for us, right? South Node Virgo. So you may become aware of, wow, I am isolating myself. I am, sleeping too much. I am, doubting the process and need to do either some spiritual or quite literal, some real kind of cleanup. Pisces is also tied to, like I said, hidden places. So closets and things that are going on, in the attic, or moving things around in back rooms or drawers. And so it can mean that, with some of the trines to Jupiter, moving things around, bringing in some feng shui, especially as we're coming into what's going to be the new Chinese New Year, maybe getting some perspective about what we need to kind of change so things feel good in the house. Bringing in water elements for some people. Others, it's going to be music, or it's going to be about kind of bringing in some kind of spiritual or religious practice. I do think we're going to see some interesting stuff go on with religious and spiritual communities. I do think that you're going to find that there are some people that are going to be out there kind of, prophesizing what's kind of coming. Speaking scripture is very much Mercury in Pisces. But we can also say that this is a time where people are feeling very inspired to share their dreams, to talk about their visions, to talk about the positive kind of turns with Jupiter's influence. Now, what we want to do is probably implement things that are going to be calming. So I like the idea of working with chamomile. I like the idea of working with lavender, whether that's for tea, if it's baths, if it's going to be for washes. I also would say work with anything that's Pisces oriented. So you guys can work with selenite if you like crystals. You can also use clear quartz for amplifying, amethyst for intuition. You guys can also be working with like aquamarine would also be really good. Anything that's kind of like shiny and reflective also would be nice with Jupiter's kind of influence that's coming through there. Even pearls, shells, anything that's connected to the ocean. Now, what you do not want to do, I think, is resist or be unwilling to go back into the past. Because in some weird way, with the South Node ruler going retrograde conjunct the North Node, we actually have to reflect on the past and deal with the past before we move forward. Pisces is actually really known for anything that's connected to empathy or forgiveness. So forgiveness practices, reconnecting with old friends, revising creative projects, right? Reflecting. There is something really positive about some of the stuff that's going to come up during this time. What you don't want to do, most likely, is not read the fine print, start new ventures, buy tech, force, decisions, not thinking logically about the outcome. You have to kind of let the intuition lead here in order to kind of navigate some of the stuff that's going to be going on. For most of you guys, I would say avoiding signing big deals or traveling without backups, is probably not a good idea. Double and triple check any travel accommodations or plans that you have to make, especially if you're traveling by water, if you're traveling internationally. Most likely, because of some of the world events that are going to be happening in February and in March, I do think we are going to see some pretty big slowdown of either international travel or international trade. Saturn is still in Pisces, so it may even mean that there is some issues going on with storms. There's some stuff going on with bridges, with dams, issues also with international borders, issues with immigration. Some of that stuff is definitely going to start kind of like popping up. As for world predictions, I think with like Jupiter retrograde and that South Node connection to Virgo, I'm expecting a lot of just emotional undercurrents in global news. Family policies, food security, healing collective trauma, and the Mercury North Node conjunction, which is one of the aspects that you're going to see that's going to happen throughout the pre-shadow on February 11th, is a fate point. So it's going to be fateful conversations, things that we have to hear, see, read, which could possibly spark some like compassionate movements or some spiritual awakenings for some people, especially in media and in society. But the retrograde might revisit scandals or misinformation revolving around water, oceans, artistic industries, the film industry, as well as anything that connects to hospitals and prisons. That trine to Jupiter is beautiful, though. I think that can mean if we see some of the more negative kind of effects of the retrograde, we will see that there is going to be a sense of empathy and compassion. We are going to see that there could be humanitarian aid, God forbid. We see some floods or some issues with storms, emotional reforms, and obviously breakthroughs that can happen when it comes to mental health awareness. Personally, and it's been weird because I feel like it's very strange now to start to watch Saturn and Neptune leave Pisces. I've always tried to navigate when there was a retrograde or an ingress into Pisces or an eclipse in Pisces by me just kind of looking at it going, all right, some things are inevitably going to come to an end, or some things I'm going to hit a wall and kind of feel like I don't know how to make sense or how to kind of proceed logically. I just have to kind of go with what my gut is telling me. And that's been the only thing that's worked. Anytime I've tried to find structure or I'm trying to pin something down when I'm going through the Pisces transits, it has not worked for me. So I would say for a lot of us, yes, there could be foggy thoughts that are coming up, and they will turn, I think, clear, and there can be some profound insights, which is actually going to show us how to take action as we're getting into March going into April. It is possible that relationships can deepen through vulnerability, and I think that's another really good aspect, especially with like some of the trines to Jupiter. Some of us might find that there's going to be some career pivots that are going towards creative or healing paths, which can actually be really great. Just watch for synchronicities. Mercury in the sign likes to send signs and omens. Particularly in Pisces, it could be fish, things that involve the oceans, saints, things that are connected to angels, things that are connected to higher realms, light beings, spirit guides, all of that kind of like woo-woo stuff is very much Pisces realm. And I really see it as the universe connecting with all of us collectively, probably through our dreams. Now, as for the key aspects that I'm going to be covering, there's only going to be 3 that we're going to look at that's happening up until the time that we see the Mercury retrograde. But on February the 6th, this is when we see Mercury enter into Pisces. So that means that now the planet of communication is moving through a water sign. So thoughts, tech, daily exchanges dive deep into Pisces. And it's really going to be challenging, I think, on one hand, because this is where Mercury is in detriment. So usually Mercury wants that sharp logic, but now it's softening, it's kind of dimming the lights, it's more poetic, it's intuitive. It reminds me, and I've said this in a video that I did a couple years ago, where I was like saying, well, you know, the transits through Pisces is almost just kind of like Alice in Wonderland, you know, and all the characters that she goes and she kind of talks to, and, you know, she's talking to the cat who's disappearing, and she's talking to the caterpillar that, you know, is like puffing away with his smoke. Like the North Node can be smoke. The North Node can be also anything that's confusing or futuristic, or things that represent something that we're kind of lusting for or wanting more of. So naturally, people are going to want to binge, right? They're naturally going to want to sleep. They're going to want to watch a lot of TV. They're going to want to disassociate. They're going to want to check out. I encourage you guys not to do that. By doing that, it's going to make it harder for you to receive some of these downloads. It's going to be harder to be kind of in alignment with what's going on with your spirit team. I also think that it can be positive because it can be good to kind of get out of some of this like pile up of all these planets that have been in Aquarius squaring Uranus. And I'm putting this video out, you know, early in February before we start even getting into the Mercury retrograde. So a lot of the stuff that's happening, that's coming out in the news, the media, that's shocking and making people go, oh my God, I can't see that, I can't believe that, or what kind of implications is that going to have physically, financially, and a lot of people are just going to be like out of sight, out of mind. Like they're not going to want to hear it. And I think that it's good because we're moving from where planets had been in a very detached sign. We will also see eclipses that are going to be happening in the midst of this transit. And it's shifting into something that's more creative, imaginative, and obviously a little bit fuzzy, but still it's more heart-centered. So it's almost kind of like we're swapping the calculator for a dream journal. And I think we need that break. I don't know, you guys give me feedback, but I certainly need the break from all the Aquarius stuff. Even if facts get a little fuzzy, subconsciously there is this sense of our insight or intuition that's really kind of sharpening. Personally, you know, your mind might become like a psychic sponge. So you might find that there's deeper empathy in convos, that there's more creative inspiration, that things are in flow, you're having spiritual downloads, maybe you're healing old mental patterns. Worldly though, you know, media and news, they're either going to have a lot of hype and spin and things that are being chopped up and kind of or falsely represented, or we're going to see there's more news about compassion, you know, artistic tone, emotional storytelling, music trends, and global focus that what can be connected to healing and art. It does open the door to collective intuition, but it also is meant to dissolve boundaries. So it can lead to some really beautiful connections, but also some kind of like illusionary misunderstandings. What you want to watch for is in the next couple of weeks, you're just going to notice, I think, just this heightened sensitivity and synchronicities when it comes to dreams, movie, arts, but guard against confusion in plans or tech glitches. So we'll see like lost emails, missing data, missing information. Suddenly things kind of come back up, and you'll see that more so at the end of February into March. We can also see that there can be some major red flags. You know, escapism would be one of them, especially through endless kind of doom scrolling or kind of vague promises. I would say embrace like the inner mystical side of yourself. If you let your intuition kind of guide your words, you're going to recognize you're not lost. You're just kind of going for a stroll, kind of like in the ether, and tuning into the universe's frequency and trying to kind of rise above some of the noise. If we trust the flow and watch kind of magic unfold, it can actually be a really amazing thing, and it can leave us feeling very much inspired and also kind of connected. Now on the 11th, we're going to see that Mercury is going to come into conjunction with the North Node in Pisces. And this is that destined meeting, phone call, conversations, prominent dream. Something is happening here. So I really want you guys to watch your dreams and what's going on the 10th, the 11th, and the 12th. Really interesting astrology, especially considering that, you know, Mercury rules that South Node. 9 degrees always deal with Sagittarius energies. So it can be expansive, big, positive, but it can also mean that there is strong connections to things that deal with international relations, law, and kind of like legal systems. So this is about foreign countries, everything foreign, foreigners and abroad, highways, main streets, boulevards, everything at large, broad, big, extended. Horses, horseback riding, stables, tennis players, hips, legs, and thigh bones, models, fashion models, publishing, books and journals, film, art, cinema, video rental, religion, priests, religious nature. Okay, so it's going to have that theme. And it's interesting because, you know, Sagittarius is ruled by Jupiter. Jupiter also traditionally rules Pisces. But I think it's going to be more about exposing some things that are connected to this, right? Are there going to be some fixed horse races? Is there going to be a scandal that's going to happen in the Catholic Church? Is there going to be a movie studio that goes under? You know, some of that stuff we may start seeing. Anyway, with Mercury hitting the North Node, this is the day that you just want to keep your eyes and ears wide open. Are you seeing the repetitive numbers then? You know, do you have a really significant meeting that day? Do you have an important conversation? Do you have a really significant dream or vision or intuitive hit? Follow it, listen to it, because there's a lot of Jupiter energy that's in the sky. Moon's going through Sagittarius. We're also seeing that Mercury is now going to be building into a trine with Jupiter. And I think this is where destiny calls. So the question is, are you going to pick up the phone? Now, when we see this pre-shadow kick off at the same time, okay, so that'll also be happening when it hits 8 degrees. So that'll actually be earlier in the day. So what an interesting day, February 11th. So let's go back. So as soon as Mercury hits about 8 degrees, we're already in the shadow. So February 11th, something very significant is happening. That's the degree it retrogrades back to. Obviously 8 degrees is Scorpio degree, so it deals with, well, Scorpio things, things that are about people going missing, people dying, unfortunately. It can be about sex scandals, money owed, debt, things that are kind of dealing with numbers connected to international trade. What else? What else is the Scorpio degree going to be about? It's a spooky degree. Could be about sex scandal stuff and some of this Epstein stuff that's continuing to be unfolded. I've been watching the story in real time. There's like files that they're uploading, and they're not putting it in zip files, so it's harder to upload it. You have to open them one by one. And you know, they have people that are using AI bots and stuff that are going in, scraping all the information and saving it, and they're searching keywords and trying to find stuff up. But there's millions and millions and millions of documents, and it's like overwhelming trying to go through all of it. But it is stuff that's now, I think, you know, going missing. They're putting documents out, they're removing it. There's whole, you know, excerpts and stuff that, you know, some independent media have downloaded, but then it's like going on and off of like servers. It's really weird. And I think there may be some connection here. I don't know. But the Scorpio degree is at the risk of one's life. Unfortunately, it can be dealing with death, assassins, maniacs, bullies, dangerous people, graves, corpse, skeletons, surgeon rooms, operation rooms, other people's property, restrooms, laboratory, litter, trash, garbage, something completely destroyed, decayed, forensics, abusive language, anything that deals with sexual energies, reproductive organs, underground rooms, cellars, basements, subterranean spaces. That's Scorpio, like scorpions, right? You find them under rocks and stuff. Rivers, riverbanks, someone else's money, loans, scholarships to borrow, pregnancy, birth, and due dates or delivery. Well, are we going to be hearing a lot of news about birth rates and birth rate decline? Are we going to be hearing a lot of news about changes with hospital policies in regards to pregnant women and mothers? Is there going to be some truth that's going to be coming out about, you know, medicine and anything that's connected to pharmaceuticals? Are they going to finally cancel pharma ads? I mean, America is one of the only countries that does that. We run pharmacy ads for everything. It's insane to me. I wonder if there's going to be a policy that's going to change. But I also wonder if there's going to be the death of a really prominent, like independent person in media. You know, I wonder if there is some expose or something that's going to, you know, be coming out and something gets exposed. I wonder if it's connected to some of these victims that have been, you know, connected to the Epstein list. And apparently a lot of their information has been point blank, you know, kind of been put out in the air with some of these documents that have been dumped. Are we going to be hearing more about underground tunnels and things that are connected to temples or churches or the Vatican or God knows what? I mean, I know this stuff sounds crazy, but this stuff is real. These things are real. You guys are going to be hearing some of this stuff. And maybe it's a resurfacing of some of the things that have happened really over this last year if we go back to the eclipse that happened in September. Now, when it hits 8 degrees and it's at that pre-shadow degree, that means that we're going to start seeing some of the Mercury retrograde effects that are going to start kicking up. So we're now going to start reviewing things intuitively. Simultaneously, because it's conjuncting the North Node, it's a karmic point of growth and destiny. So in Pisces, it's really kind of fusing this mental energy with soul evolution. Conjunctions really kind of blend forces. So we've got Mercury's ideas aligning with the North Node, which is about fated forward kind of pushing revelations in compassion, spirituality, conspiracy, things that are hidden and kind of behind closed doors. I think a lot of this is going to be about reuniting families. I think it's also possibly going to be about helping mothers reconnect to children or missing people, find family. I do think that's going to be a big theme, especially a lot of the children that have gotten missing, since some of the changes that have happened over the last couple of years with recent administrations, with people who have been going back and forth over the border and people who have been trafficked, unfortunately, people who have gone missing in the process. I think it's going to be maybe an exposure about some of that stuff and starting to recognize and realize that there's like a bigger picture that's kind of going on. Now, personally, it's like a destiny download. So, fated ideas, meetings, and like aha moments can happen that really nudge you towards, I think, your healing path. So it can be about spiritual pursuits or creative callings. And worldly, this is going to spark collective shifts where media is going to highlight fate-driven stories. Okay, I talked about in recent videos, like the toast that had Jesus on it. But people are going to be like talking about religious experiences that they're having, near-death experiences, dying and coming back, seeing God, the connection with the higher beings, higher consciousness. And we're probably just going to see some of that stuff out in the world. We're also probably going to see that there's a lot of empathic movements or psychic trends in society. So viral spiritual content, that's very likely. We'll see some of that. And that North Node is boosting it. So it's accelerating the soul growth amid some of the Pisces transits that are going on. This is all happening right before we have an eclipse. This is all happening right before Saturn and Neptune conjunct. Everybody's antennas are about to just go way high, and they're all going to be suddenly kind of picking up stuff that they wouldn't typically pick up. And so with that happening, the frequencies are going to be hard for some people to kind of deal with. What you want to watch for over the next month, I think, is just, track repeating thoughts, right? Or maybe encounters that keep happening. They'll resurface and then they'll come back during the retrograde. Definitely watch for, kind of karmic vibes in conversations or in media. Watch for the red flags, which can be kind of like foggy signs that are kind of misleading or confusing, or just feeling emotional overload from the collective energies, because we can get slimed with all these retrogrades when stuff is going through Pisces. That's why, saging or smudging yourself, taking a salt bath, spraying down your auric field, meditating and putting yourself in your kind of protective, kind of Teflon, I think shell before you leave the house could be really good because it's what you're visualizing. And I think that it's also going to be probably a time where, the cosmos are really whispering to a lot of us, hey, ask these questions, have this conversation, look more into this. And if you're hearing that, listen up. Because the conjunction is really the cosmic green light for stepping into alignment with a very bold and expansive faith as it trines Jupiter. We're going to find that there is some kind of destined connection in that area of our chart, wherever Pisces is, and it's about really tapping into those higher vibes. Now, on the 16th is when we see the first trine, and that is great, except for the fact that Jupiter is still retrograde. Nevertheless, it's still good conversation and communication that's kind of happening. So when Mercury hits 15, it's going to be trining, and that is a Gemini degree, which is kind of cool. So it's about two sides of a matter, two sides of a coin, two different scenarios. And this is why I've been talking a lot recently, explaining to people, the future is not defined. The future is going to be defined by how you feel, okay? Collectively, how we feel. And so if we have people who are in like Pisces, pandemonium, panic mode, we're not actually gaining control of where things are going. But if we're rock solid with our faith and we're reading things, we're moving our bodies, we're doing stuff that's kind of slow and kind of flowing, or things that are connected to water, connected to nature, we are going to be able to calm some of the emotions down. We're going to be able to think more clearly and be a little bit more rational And we're going to be able to have faith, not only in ourselves, but in the universe, that whatever is happening is meant to happen. So going back to that reference that I used about like the casino winnings, right? It's almost like you guys have to get excited about what's going on. Like, don't be in doom and gloom land. A lot of things, a lot of masks have to come off now. And that has to happen for us to be able to kind of spiritually ascend. So that way we can start to see all of the things that are starting to become fractured. And it can be difficult because a lot of people, places, things, especially things in society, especially celebrities, movies, institutions, right, leaders that we've put faith in, we no longer can kind of be asleep at the wheel. And that's really what this final retrograde out of Pisces, as we're embracing all this Aries energy in March and April, is really going to be about. It's like in our face. Pisces can kind of drift away from things and it doesn't have to look at it. But Aries is going to force us to deal with some of these problems head on. So with Mercury in a trine to Jupiter, we've got the past south node ruler, Mercury, and the north node ruler, Jupiter, harmonizing with each other. And Jupiter is retrograde. So it's like we do have to revisit our beliefs. We do have to kind of make sure we're getting sleep and we're getting rest and we're practicing empathy. And like, we have to do that stuff. And yeah, the world's going to seem a little wonky, but I think that it really means that this harmonious aspect between Mercury and Jupiter creates this easy flow for Mercury's intuitive mind in Pisces and Jupiter's kind of retrograde, reevaluating growth and wisdom, and what we need to kind of nurture, what we need to kind of take care of or remember. So both signs are water signs, so there's a lot of emotional depth. Like I said, you know, that trine is where we had the eclipse that took place last September, a lunar eclipse. So that was all about emotional culminations, wrapping things up, some kind of, you know, fulfillment. And Jupiter is retrograde, so it turns that expansion inward. So we have to focus inward, which the retrograde is about. So it's abundant with reflection, with rest, with compassion, with healing. And it also blends kind of psychic thoughts with heartfelt faith and soul-nourishing kind of insights. Now, personally, what does it mean for you? Well, I mean, lucky, right? This can be lucky, a really good lucky communication day, contract day. It is in shadow, but still, this can be a great day for communication. If you want to get that stuff in, if you want to make those plans, you want to sign those commitments, you want to launch something, it can be a decent day to do that. The only problem is that this is right on the eve of what's going to be the February 17th solar eclipse in Aquarius. There's a lot of other destabilizing energies as these planets are coming into a square with Uranus. So I'm of the frame of mind that I'm like, nah, I'm going to wait. I'll wait until Mercury comes back into a trine with Jupiter, and I want to see Mercury direct. I want to see Jupiter direct before I go planning any trips, before I go making any big permanent decisions or anything, because my gut's telling me just wait till the dust settles and then we'll figure it out. But for you guys, it might mean that there's lucky emotional expansions. Like I said, heartfelt talks, intuitive opportunities that arise, healing family bonds, expansion in the home, or getting ready to move. It could also mean that things feel like a blessing, that even though things feel chaotic, it's about feeling like we have a sense of gratitude for what we do have rather than fixating on what we don't have. And in terms of like the worldly kind of matters, obviously we can hear more positivity in the media. That would be wonderful. We can also hear that there can be like emotional reforms, family-based news, you know, global kind of compassion waves, and breakthroughs when it comes to mental health and aid. Now, the eclipse linking to that from September maybe revive some of the past themes for emotional healing. What you want to watch with this aspect is in the coming months, look for some of this expansive kind of ripples that are going to kind of continue. It's about past emotional patterns resurfacing for resolution. Now, there can be over-idealism in plans or family dramas get amplified. I will not candy coat that. That can happen. We can also see that in some ways, though, abundance is actually really blooming, and it's about kind of being positive and, like I said, practicing gratitude when it comes to our frame of mind. If you feel like you need to have a conversation, if you feel like you need to seize the moment, do it. The trine is kind of like your emotional treasure chest. So if you guys want to nurture those vibes, you can have a lot of joy. You can have a lot of heartfelt connections. There could be a lot of, you know, kind of comedy that can kind of be coming through, or people who are trying to poke fun at things that can make us feel better. And this is about really expanding into what I think is like our best self. And we want to let some of those blessings kind of flow. Now, then we get into the retrograde. So that won't be until the 25th. But on the 25th is when Mercury is going to turn retrograde, and that'll be at 22 degrees. So it's going to retrograde at a Capricorn degree. And I'll get in more into that in my second video, but 22 is with trouble, challenge, governments, leadership. You're about to see a freaking wave of resignations, okay? Some of you guys don't know this, but big people around the world are resigning. People who are, heads of companies, people who have been heads of banks, people who have been very much involved with royal families, big movie studios. I mean, big. This is like global, kind of media and corporate related things. You're going to see more of it. Pisces is also about where people vanish. So you're going to start hearing like, oh, that person left the country, or that person's like fleeing, or that person's suddenly MIA. Start watching what happens, because you're going to start to see everybody turning on each other when they start to kind of realize that the jig is up. With the Mercury retrograde happening, that means that, boom, we're in these energies. We're also between eclipses. So that we'll have a Virgo eclipse that's going to come in around the 3rd. So that in itself is already kind of like a bit of like a toss-up. But now we're moving towards what's going to be a trine on this day. So you're going to see the moon coming into a trine with the sun, so things flow. We're also going to see that Jupiter is influencing something that is kind of connected to the Mercury retrograde. And now they're both retrograde. So Mercury's going to go back and it's going to trine again. Well, as Mercury retrogrades, it's going to come into conjunction with Venus, okay? And so this can mean that we're trying to let the light in. We're trying to bring healing in. We're trying to bring compassion in. There's forgiveness. There is opportunities to clear up old kind of karmic issues when it comes to love, money, values, security, stability. And those are also coming into a trine with Jupiter. So there's actually some light at the end of the tunnel. What I think this is really going to be about is really opening us up and kind of really focusing on, okay, over the next 3 weeks, what is it that we need to be reviewing? And so it's going to flip inward. It's got 3 weeks that'll do its retrograde until about March the 20th. It'll go back to 8 degrees of Pisces. And it's going to be about rethinking and some kind of grand reveal. And then we're off to the races at the end of March, going into April. All these planets are now going to be moving into Aries. And it's just totally different. This will be a subconscious purge. This will be all the crazy dreams. This is going to be the illusions that are coming up, the unspoken emotions that are kind of coming to the surface, all opposing the South Node in Virgo. So it's urging us to release perfectionism for intuitive surrender, rest, right? Because obviously it has that kind of connection to Neptune. Saturn and Neptune are also going to be still conjunct in Aries. So this is only a matter of 6 days after the Saturn-Neptune conjunction on February 20th. Ruled by Neptune, obviously, so it has that kind of sense of mystical, introspective vibes. But I think you're going to see a lot of people that are just going to kind of be like, I just need some time to process what change is kind of going on. Now, you're going to see personally that there can be major healing revelations. I think for a lot of people, old memories or creative blocks might start to surface for revision, fostering spiritual growth or kind of empathic kind of reconnections. People returning to church, returning to temple, people getting baptized is a huge theme. I've noticed this a lot when we see aspects between Pisces and also, Jupiter and Cancer, the revival, right, of everybody saying it's the end times, the end is near. So, and hey, look, whatever people want to believe in, I'm fine with. As far as I'm concerned, it's all the same thing. Literally, it's all a higher power. Do right by other people. Don't kill, don't steal, don't hurt, the innocent. Don't hurt anybody, period. I mean, and maybe, perhaps, we're going to start to kind of realize that if we can take that frame of mind collectively, and we start to realize and kind of question that not everything is what it seems, then we can actually start to kind of unite, then we can kind of heal stuff. I think on a personal level, it's going to be, I think, for a lot of people that are just trying to foster more spiritual growth and having much more of an emotional connection. Worldly, right? Media slowdowns. So you're going to see replaying of videos and stories. So this is something you want to watch. If you're a conspiracy theorist like me, the crisis actors where you see the same people that always turn up at the same events where there is some kind of massive world thing happening. We might see that. We might see them replaying old clips, or they're like, oh, there's this disaster. And we're like, that was from 5 years ago. What is this? So the internet's probably going to be picking up on some of that stuff too. We can see that there can be scandals, delays that's going on with money, with trade, with banking. This is where there is some also revealing also of people's true nature, right? So the retrograde's going towards Venus, so there could be things that are exposed about people's, kind of hidden private relationships, and we're finding things that have been kind of hidden in places, old photos, old conversations, things that are kind of also making us reconnect maybe with like our ancestors, so we can have dreams about deceased kind of loved ones as well. Healing in art fields, maybe postponed events due to rain or due to flooding or due to weather. And really it's going to be a pause, I think, for some collective soul searching. What you want to watch for is during the retrograde and, you know, the post shadow, which will happen clear until April, is embrace the re-activities. Review journals, reconnect subtly, watch for miscommunication, escapism. So, you know, be careful with all that binging of TV to avoid the feelings, psychic fatigue for sure, and realize that there's this inward dive that we're going to be doing to get some much needed rest and kind of a little bit of like a reset. I think that we're going to be uncovering throughout this all the hidden kind of subconscious and psychic kind of Easter eggs. There are going to be some hidden gems there. So if we trust the process, even though things don't seem so clear now, they're about to be a whole lot clearer here pretty soon. So let's get into the 12 rising signs. Please do subscribe to the channel if you guys want to see the Mercury retrograde video. I've given you all the goodies in the direction I can give you until we get to the retrograde. So you'll get that as we're kind of getting closer to the second half of February. I do talk about it in my February horoscopes for the 12 rising signs too, if you guys cannot wait. And I'm going to discuss Mercury's ingress and kind of that pre-shadow prep for the 12 rising signs. Now, to make the most of my videos, I recommend listening to your rising sign because it's going to tell you quite literally which house Mercury is going to be moving into in your chart. And I am a Western astrologer. That is the kind of astrology that I like to practice. So listen to your rising sign to see where this is happening. Listen to your sun sign to see how it's impacting you, your energy, your career, your joy, your vitality, and then listen to your moon sign to see how this is impacting you emotionally. I do use the whole sign rising system, but if you guys are a Placidus user like me, you're going to want to look at where 8 degrees of Pisces is, and 8 to 2 degrees is kind of where you're seeing this kind of hover between now and really April. So it's going to be quite the stretch that this is going to be taking place. All right, so let's start with my Aries and my Aries risings. You guys are going to be experiencing, let's take this back here. Sorry, guys. Mercury going into the sign of Pisces. That is going to be taking place for you in your natal 12th house. And the 12th house is, well, what's kind of the invisible worlds? What is in your subconscious? What's in your closets? What are you sleeping on? What are you maybe thinking about before you kind of come out with it? So probably a lot of the stuff that I said to you resonates. Mercury rules your 3rd house of communication, short travels, learning, siblings, cars, and it's also connected to your 6th house of health habits, routine, and your workplace or pets. So for my Aries rising is very interesting because, you know, Saturn and Neptune's going into your 1st house and you're just feeling like you're just getting attuned to all of these like heavy planets moving through your sign, which can feel on one hand like you're ready to step up to the plate even though you're not sure how it's going to go. And there's almost this like sense of being like, am I ready? Am I making the jump? You know, while Mercury's kind of going into your 12th house. Now, it will retrograde there, so that means your subconscious, secrets, retreats, foreign lands, hospitals, healing centers, anything about private rooms is going to come up. And I would expect that there's going to be some dream revelations, there's going to be some hidden fears that can kind of come up about your health, about communicating, about traveling, about moving. You might also watch for isolation or sneaky miscommunications, especially with people at work or within health fields. The positive is that it's going to trine Jupiter. So that trine to Jupiter means that, you know, it's speaking directly to your home, your emotions, your family, your living situation. And really what it wants to do is expand your family healing or expand your living situation or give you some type of inner security. Maybe it's trying to remove all of these kind of subconscious like doubts or blockages that are kind of hanging around. I'd love to see you guys rearranging your bedroom. I'd love to see you guys hanging out in a spa or going to like a sauna. I'd love to see you guys really prioritizing not just your physical health, but your mental and your emotional health and your sleep. I also think that this is a time where naturally as planets are moving through your 12th house, you're preparing for your season as an Aries sun, rising, or moon, where everything gets cycled out and you go through the 12th house and it's like, okay, well, these are all the things I dealt with this year. What do I leave behind? How do I move forward? And then boom, you know, like a rocket, you know, second half of March into April, things are just going to suddenly start speeding up very, very quickly for you. So I want you guys to really take care of your health. Maybe journal some subconscious downloads or some dreams or some things that you kind of feel or come up for you in meditation or even in therapy or in healing spaces. And I do think that this is going to provide you with a lot more emotional growth and kind of security throughout the process. Good luck, Aries. All right, for my Taurus and Taurus risings, you guys are going to do this Mercury retrograde and the Mercury ingress in your natal 11th house of Pisces. Mercury rules your money, your resources, and anything that's connected to your values, your physical and financial stability. It's also connected to creativity, creative projects, children, romantic, dating and things where you're wanting to kind of have more fun. The 5th house is what you create, right? So when you're taking Mercury into the 11th house, it's something that you have been working on, something that's very personal, and you're kind of getting ready to share it with your friends or with your kind of networks or community. So as it goes into your 11th house, naturally, I think for a lot of you guys, this is going to be about reevaluating your goals, reevaluating your friendships, your future dreams. Watch for group drama that can kind of happen. There can be idealistic flops too. The positive is that there's going to be some trines that you're going to see to Jupiter in Cancer in your natal 3rd house. So this could be good for websites, writing, communication, short distance trips, ideas, talking with siblings. It can also mean that it's really about boost in intuitive networking or some of your sibling bonds. I would recommend, sharing a creative vision with your community or with your friends. And you could do that, via art, via poetry. Maybe it's about, manifesting more abundance. Maybe it's going to be about giving some words of inspiration to groups of people and being able to kind of connect with them or inviting them to some kind of gathering, be that in person or a community or even an online event. Okay? Good luck, Taurus. For my Geminis and Gemini rising, your chart ruler's on the move. You're going to see Mercury, which rules you, going into your 10th house of career and reputation. While Mercury rules you, your actions, your body, and your visibility, it's also connected to your private life, your home, and your family. So you've got a very private kind of planet and also a very personal planet moving into the 10th. So all eyes are kind of on you, Gemini. Pay especially close attention because this reminds me a lot of what happened in the spring of last year, where you saw a retrograde in your 10th house. There was some kind of change with your status or some change going on with work. Maybe you were going from, being out of work to going back to work, or maybe you were, moving and then you took a new job. Maybe it means that, you were working and then you had to be more kind of prepared and kind of involved with something that was going on with family and it brought you out of work. You can see that deja vu that can kind of come through this transit. Now, because Mercury rules your 1st and your 4th and it's going to go into your 10th and then retrograde, you're reassessing something about your career, trying to maybe switch directions professionally. Maybe there's some reputational changes going on. You may use this period to rethink your public image or your goals. There can be some misunderstandings with bosses. There can also be a sense of trying to get out of family drama, trying to focus more on what's going on with your professional life. The positive is that Mercury will trine Jupiter, and Jupiter is in your house of money and wealth and resources, and it rules clients, relationships, and partners. So if I were a Gemini rising, I would go into this being like, okay, now is not the time to launch anything new, but is the time to go back to people and kind of say, hey, do you want to reconnect? Do you want to have lunch? Do you want to, work together again? Can we renegotiate a salary? Is there a way to be able to kind of make this work in a way where I feel like I'm getting what I need? And that will work best for you. And this will be a process that's going to play out because you still have an eclipse that's going to impact this in March. And this really won't be done until April. But it seems like the fine tuning or the final tuning in your professional kind of status or your relationships with people is starting to kind of happen. And it does look like it's going to make you feel more secure. It's going to make you feel more valued. And it can be especially good when it comes to, security. So I would really look for, an opportunity to really nurture value-aligned opportunities or relationships. Meditate on your legacy, right? Visualize emotional security leading the way to more prosperous paths. Good luck, Gemini. For Cancer and Cancer rising, you guys are going to be experiencing this Mercury ingress in the sign of Pisces, fellow sister water sign, also making some nice aspects to Jupiter in your sign. So I love this for you guys. Mercury is obviously connected to your 12th house of subconscious, hidden, and self-undoing, and your 3rd house of communication, short-distance travel, learning, and siblings. All right, Cancer. Well, obviously, Mercury entering into the 9th house can mean that your mind is on 9th house themes. So traveling, courses, learning, long-distance trips, higher education. And I think that with it going into this, it can mean that you are maybe doing some research into traveling. Maybe you're reflecting on your religious or spiritual beliefs or your philosophy, thinking about maybe taking a bit of a trip. But I think that I would watch actually for delays with going back to school, delays with traveling. There could be some shifts in terms of your belief system or your education. Some spiritual doubt can definitely kind of come up in the pre-shadow. But remember that it is going to be trining Jupiter in your sign. So it means that, even if you are doubting something, I would say you need to have faith in yourself. You need to be getting back maybe into a routine that's both physical and spiritual. So think like yoga, Tai Chi, meditation by water, right? Those things can actually be really, really great. And I think that some of you guys may find that you're considering returning back to a place you have visited before, going back to school, maybe reconnecting with reading old spiritual text or returning to a spiritual kind of practice would be really, really great for you guys. And it's really, with the trine, it's expanding your intuitive presence. So you're going to feel more in alignment when you're doing these things. So if you can read some spiritual texts or maybe kind of, consider looking into a spiritual retreat and anything that's going to be about kind of wisdom and growth and tapping into your emotions, I think it's going to be really great for you. Be careful with traveling, be careful with publishing anything or legal matters. There can be some delays that can kind of happen in the month ahead. Good luck. All right, Leo and Leo rising, you guys are going to do Mercury's ingress into the sign of Pisces in your natal 8th house. Well, this is where the shadows are, right? So it's harder to kind of see here, although the sun will be coming through this and kind of illuminating it soon. The sun obviously, is going to be there. And I would be just thinking about when you start to see the Cazimi, which is going to be like the halfway point through the retrograde, which will be coming later as we're getting into kind of like March. But for right now, we look at Mercury in the 8th house, where it's deep in the fantasy land, the psychological review, going through tax documents, paperwork, maybe going and connecting with a therapist. This can mean that there's also a major reevaluation of secret communication, anything that's kind of connected to intimacy. And Mercury rules your friends, your goals, and your allies. It's also connected to your money and your resources and your values. So when planets go into the 8th house, you're always dealing with other people's stuff. And there can be some fogginess and some vagueness regarding, well, what is mine and what is ours? What is mine and what is yours? And that might involve, group funding, people who are investing in things, friends, and, their kind of contribution to something that's going to impact you financially. So I would be really going into this going, okay, it's time to re-examine old debts. And this is not always financial. It can be karmic debt, right? And relationships. It can mean that there are secrets or potentially even this realization that there are some really deep bonds that are being kind of formed. Be very, 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 very careful with financial illusions, okay? Or trust issues. Like if this were me, I would be really monitoring like my credit. I would be monitoring anything connected to transactions with credit cards, debit cards. If there's potentially some fraudulent things that are going on, you might catch that. It could also mean that this is a time where you're kind of deep going through, preparing your taxes, or you're working your way through something that deals with spousal support, child support, something where money is owed. So like an inheritance even could be something that you're kind of working through. For many of you guys, I think that if you try to see things clearly and you're like, okay, I don't want any illusions in this, I don't want any trust issues, it can be really positive. And Jupiter will be trining with Mercury, so that means that there can be some really amazing connections in your dreams, and that it can really kind of reveal to you where there's been some hidden wounds, and it can do it compassionately so you can learn to open up and kind of trust again. I would be working with affirmations here, healing baths. I would also be considering, doing some work revolving around intimacy and vulnerability. This is a really, really powerful time for healing for you guys. And I think it's about healing self-worth issues, healing financial issues, any issues where there's been some scarcity mindset, Obviously, you know, planets that are getting ready to move through there. And then we're going to see the lunar eclipse in Virgo in early March in your second house. Tells me that there's a lot of you kind of going, what have I lost? And like, what do I have that I can rely on, right? And whether that's a relationship, you know, if it's a job, whatever, something is being kind of like reassessed there. And I really like this for a lot of you guys that are considering getting a reading or maybe talking to like a medium. Could also be an opportunity to, like I said, do some kind of like psychological healing or help kind of move away from trauma. Good luck, Leo. All right, Virgo and Virgo rising, are you ready? Think back to what happened last spring, Virgo, all right? Your chart ruler Mercury went retrograde in your 7th house. We also saw eclipses that were happening in like your 1st and kind of 7th house axis last year. We saw another eclipse that happened in the fall of last year that's now getting reactivated through some of these Mercury transits. So your Mercury, wherever Mercury goes is where you go. If you are one of those Virgos that's been doing a dance back and forth with a relationship, are we in? Are we out? Are we going to be together? Are we not? Are you leaving? Are you staying? You know, this is that kind of like finale, and likely you'll still go through that during the Mercury retrograde, kind of March into April. But I do think what's really interesting about this is like history repeats itself, you know, and Saturn is the Lord of Karma. So when he leaves a house, he leaves a gift. So if it's a relationship that's finally facing a turning point, it can be because of something you say or something you decide. I also think that with Mercury's kind of tied to your 10th house of your career and your reputation, it's like a defining moment where the people you work with or the people that you let go or the people that you partner with or the people that you separate has a huge impact on like your career and your status as well. It's not purely just that. Uranus is going to go there soon too, Virgo. So you're going to have some changes to that regardless. But I do think that with that connection to your career and yourself, as Mercury goes into the 7th house, naturally you want to connect with partners more. But I think that the shadow is going to be saying, actually, I'm rethinking relationships. You need to watch for exes coming back. It's very common with a retrograde here. You also need to watch for reoccurring patterns coming up in relationships where psychological issues, mental health issues, isolation, you know, sometimes addiction can come up in relationships. But it can also represent that there is this like final kind of understanding because Mercury is going to retrograde very close to Venus. That's just like, you know, like, are we done here? You know, are we in or are we out? And if we're in, because Venus represents stability, then we need something that's going to be like defining and we need to actually really go to the next phase. And so for some people, it's like, yes, they need the engagement ring, right? Or they need the promise or they need the security. For other people, it's that they need that validation and that they're really seeking somebody who can kind of give it to them. I think with the trine to Jupiter, it's wonderful because Jupiter is your 7th house ruler. And so with Mercury going through the 7th, you know, some of you guys might have some changes with clients, changes with business partners, changes with spouses, and you're going to be really tapping into where can I get some really good advice from good friends? Where is there this need to approach relationships if they are ending from a place of being like, hey, like, we're friends, you know, like we don't want to hurt each other. If this is going to end, we need to do this in a way that's going to be like, you know, kind of like, you know, kind and meaningful. We can like set it free compassionately, especially because of the connections to, I think, Jupiter and Saturn. It's just so significant here. For others, it's about fostering group networks. It's not about romantic relationships. It's about, hey, I want to bring in more clients. I'm networking with people. I think it's a really good time to have heart-to-heart conversations, you know, with trusted allies. I think it's a good time to refine your relational ideas and do it intuitively. Talking to a therapist, talking to an astrologer, great time as you're having planets go through the 7th house where you can get perspective from people who aren't as cerebral as you, people who are going to be a little bit more woo-woo, and also help you kind of really tap into your goals and like where you're supposed to be in relationship land. When the eclipse comes in Virgo next month, in early March, that ruler, obviously Virgo, will be retrograde here. So I could see some Virgos and Virgo risings going, actually, you know what, I'm changing therapists, or I'm going back to them, or we're, you know, getting married finally, or we're working through our stuff. So it's not all bad. But you may have some friends that are like, you sure you want to do that? You know, is that a good idea? And like, you need to have people who are going to be kind of neutral and able to really help you sort through some of this so that way you can really kind of get the love that you deserve. Good luck, Virgo. Libra risings. You guys are going to be seeing Mercury entering into the sign of Pisces, moving through your natal 6th house. Definitely a house that Mercury does well in. And obviously Venus is there right now too. So you guys are already kind of aware of some of the themes of the 6th house. I think that you know, Mercury's tie to the ninth house, which is about travel, you know, education, learning, legal matters, your beliefs, and anything with, you know, higher philosophy. And the 12th house, which can be about self-undoing, releasing, letting go, sleep, and things that are kind of connected to your private habits and things that are behind the scene, are now going to be brought into the 6th house. That's just like, well, how do these things impact your health, right? How does it impact your schedule? How does it impact your office, your job even? So it is definitely very much about health, work, and habits and pets. But it's a little bit more than that, because I think that with Mercury coming into shadow, your chart ruler also being in this house, it's kind of saying, well, you're going to be really reviewing your routines, and you're going to be kind of asking yourself, do I need to change it up a little bit, you know? And am I changing my job or the hours that I'm working? Am I making some changes by maybe going back to, you know, the gym, reconnecting with my healthcare team? Am I needing to spend more time with my pets? Am I needing to expand my business and hire help? And it's going to be playing very nicely with Jupiter. You will actually see that it's going to trine Jupiter several times. And Jupiter is retrograde now in your 10th house of career and reputation, so it does kind of reflect on media or anything connecting to communication, writing, teaching, and traveling. So you may need to refine through the retrogrades something about when you're traveling, when you're posting, when you're working, you know, when you're going to work, when you're working out, and you need to do it in an intuitive way. And so I can just tell you, like, as a Libra rising myself, I have found that there have been times when I'm just like, yep, can't keep a rigid schedule right now. And I usually am really good about that. But it's kind of taught me that there are some things I just can't plan for, you know, and if I get sick, or, you know, if I'm feeling under the weather, or, you know, there are some issues that are kind of going on that are more pet related or schedule related, or, you know, not getting enough sleep. I'm like, I'm not firing at all cylinders. So I have to be willing to make change. And that has helped kind of get me through it. Watch for the expansion in your emotional fulfillment publicly. I think that's going to be a big one, especially if you're kind of just getting into a flow of just feeling better. Wonderful to kind of infuse your daily rituals with creativity, right? So I have found myself kind of being like, I want to get like new teas. I want to get teas for different purposes, which, you know, has been part of it. It's also been about kind of adopting new kind of like practices of like meditation, or trying to kind of be better with my sleep routine, knowing that the trines are really going to kind of boost not only my mood and my performance, but also just anything in terms of what I can get done out in the world and have, I think, better recognition or getting more favorable results with my job. So hopefully you guys are able to kind of work with that. I hope it goes well. Do watch your health, particularly anything that deals with your digestion, your lymphatic system, your immune system also, because you can be feeling a little under the weather, and keep an eye on your furry friends. Okay? Good luck, my Libras. All right, Scorpio and Scorpio rising. You are also one of the signs that I would say is definitely going to navigate this, I think, a little bit better than some of the other signs, because it's in a fellow sister water sign. Especially if you have anything 14, 15, 16 degrees of Scorpio. Sun, moon, rising, even a personal planet there. Because you're the missing third amigo of the water trine, and you are just going to be feeling like your antennas are just like on, right? You're just receiving, receiving, receiving. So it can be very emotional, very psychic, very intuitive, very healing and therapeutic for you as you kind of go through some of these trines. For Scorpio, you guys are going to be seeing that Mercury is going to be entering into your 5th house, which is arguably one of the better houses, because the 5th house is going to be about romance and desires and being creative or being on stage, playing instruments, hobbies, writing music, writing poetry, you know, your own business if you're self-employed, taking risks, falling in love, having kids, all that stuff. And it's nice also to see that it's harmonizing with you in your natal planets. It's also nice to see Venus that's there. And this is kind of like the final kind of retrograde that you're going to be experiencing. That's going to be really kind of, I think, giving you some clarity on what's going to make you happy, what you love, and also dating if you're a single Scorpio or Scorpio rising. Now, I'd also say that yes, it's encouraged you to revisit your passions when Mercury goes into this house. And Mercury is tied to your 8th house of intimacy, joint finances, you know, taxes, debt, inheritance, all that stuff. It's also connected to your goals, your community, and your friends. So as Mercury moves into Pisces, you're going to find that one of the biggest themes here is about just revisiting fun, what it means to have fun, what it means to play, Yes, there can be some dramatic flings. There can also be, you know, kind of blasts from the past and you're hearing from exes or people that you've kind of taken up with. But it's also asking you to really kind of observe and examine what creative blocks you have. What's nice about this is that it is going to be in a trine with Jupiter, and Jupiter is in the 9th house of travel, education, your philosophy, and Jupiter also rules money. So there may be some reevaluation of what you're willing to risk or what you're investing in. That could mean, hey, I am willing to spend money to take a course, or I am willing to spend money to go on vacation, or hey, I really want to try my hand at trying to publish something, or maybe I'm going to go back and refine something that I would like to kind of teach people. With the trines, it will enhance travel as well as wisdom. And I think it's really going to inspire for a lot of you guys, you know, a lot of expansive opportunities for adventure, be that literally or figuratively. I would be focusing on channeling the emotions into art or play, and also, you know, attracting more through that Jupiter, belief shifting experiences. So what you believe about family, what you believe about life, what you believe about being creative, what you believe about falling in love, this is a really nice aspect for a lot of you guys, and I think you're really going to enjoy it. And if you have been single, you might be getting back into dating. There can be some defining kind of conversations about relationships or children, or, you know, how you feel about dating that can also come up during this time. And it can be, you know, traveling enhances meeting people. Education enhances meeting people. So look for those opportunities if you are single and ready to mingle. Enjoy that, Scorpio. Good luck. For Sag and Sag rising, what's up, Sag? Well, Mercury is entering into Pisces. And this is like the last wave of some of like the more kind of chaotic, mutable things that you're going to be kind of dealing with for some time. It really starts to kind of subside as you're getting into about April. Obviously, Mercury is moving into the 4th house, which deals with your roots, your home, your family, everything from communication with siblings to talking to parents, dealing with neighbors. That can kind of be like that busy kind of transactional energy of Mercury. And Mercury rules your committed partnerships like spouses, relationships and partners, or relationships with siblings. It's also connected to your career and your status. So naturally, my Saggies, you guys have a lot of planets over this next month that are kind of getting ready to move into your 4th house. And so this is that time of year where there is a lot of building the foundation for the rest of the year to kind of, you know, be supported from, I guess. And what you're going to find is with Mercury going into the 4th house, the themes of hearing from exes, reconnecting with family, reassessing your living situation, working from home, all of these things can kind of come up. I think that you're rethinking your roots or maybe your living situation. Maybe you're looking for solutions to how to navigate a move, or whether you're moving in with somebody, or maybe you're contemplating relocating, moving back home even. It is possible somebody could be moving in or moving out. Venus is there as well, so you might be just redecorating, or you're considering, you know, doing some feng shui, or maybe you're thinking about like decluttering. Not a bad idea. If you are working with a partner or a professional, or maybe you're just deciding that, you know, hey, I want to bring in, you know, a designer to kind of help me make sure everything's like a little bit more vibey and fluid, you could. What you want to watch for is that there can be miscommunications with family. There can be misunderstandings with relationships at home. There can be things that are pulling you out of work and back to, you know, your hometown, or having to be more focused on what's going on with home and family alterations and stuff that you're fixing, and kind of family relational dynamics that is not really allowing you to feel totally focused at work. And you will see this kind of manifest as you're going into March. It will happen when we have the eclipse in Virgo, which is going to highlight this as well. The positive is that, believe it or not, for you, Mercury is going to trine Jupiter several times. So it almost looks like the family relationships, the going back home, the reconnecting with property, the wrapping up of selling homes, inheriting money, and, you know, inheriting property, if those things are happening, moving even, is actually beneficial for you financially. And with Jupiter in the 8th house, right now it's retrograde, but in March it's going to be direct. So I could see some of you guys actually making some positive changes with property that could actually bring you more money, or moving a partner in and now you guys are splitting the bills. That kind of stuff can kind of happen. I also think that this is just about shared resources and like that deepening of an emotional or an intimate connection with another person. I would really recommend with this retrograde, like family meditations, maybe having home altars, so that way it can really kind of help nurture some of the more transformative kind of things happening at home. think back to what happened last spring because it's very similar to that, or it can be suggesting that now it's the finale of some of the things that have happened since the eclipse that happened last fall, and now you're wrapping up some of this stuff. But several trines between Mercury and Jupiter does bode well with family relationships and romantic relationships in the long run. I think you're just in the final stretch of just the karmic obligations that you have to your family, or your ancestral patterning that you're still kind of flushing out. And then as you're getting into the end of March, going into April, you're starting to come up for air and you're like, wow, okay, all right. So now I'm like finally kind of free of this, and you're going to see things that are going to really dramatically shift. Leases, all right, signing leases, buying houses, all those things. Be very careful here. Especially things can have water damage, so you need to have like inspections. Be very careful with how water can impact your home. So that could be floods, that could be dishwashers that go haywire, that could mean problems with pools, things springing leaks, storms even. So watch for all of that stuff that can be impacting your home. Good luck, Sag. For my Cappies and Capricorn risings, you guys are going to be experiencing this Mercury ingress into the sign of Pisces. This will be happening in your natal 3rd house, which is obviously the house that deals with the mind, and it's anything that deals with communication, siblings, contracts, websites, anything that deals with short distance travel and learning. Now for you guys, Mercury is tied to your 6th house of health, habit, and routine, and the 9th house of foreign travel, higher education, legal matters, anything that deals with your beliefs. So obviously as Mercury is entering into this house, it's a house that it actually really likes to be in because of its association with Gemini. So it may be able to kind of like dissect and kind of get some of the more kind of emotional side of things a little bit more clearly than some of the other signs. But what you will find is that there is this review coming in of, okay, am I buying a car? Am I selling a car? Am I moving? Am I signing a lease? Am I going back and tweaking a website? Do I need to review a contract? Am I changing something about a short distance trip? Do I need to reconnect with my sister or my brother? And we can see sibling spats here, right? And Saturn's getting ready to leave here as well. So it can be kind of foreshadowing that there's been a lot of karma with siblings recently, in recent years, and maybe there's been a disassociation with them, a blockage from them, maybe you've had a difficult time communicating with them, or there's been some vehicle issues, maybe there's been some learning delays. And so now that Mercury is coming in and it's going to retrograde, it's helping you work through that. I would say for Capricorn risings, what I do like is that it's about getting out of feeling mentally scattered. And you're going to see that Mercury is going to trine Jupiter several times. And so Jupiter is the ruler of your 3rd house, so it can enhance communication with siblings and neighbors, but it can also mean that through travel or through movement, it's opening the door to better communication with romantic partners, spouses. This could also mean that certain tweaks in your, kind of schedule or your day-to-day opens the door to meeting people and like chance opportunities to meet the one. Wonderful aspects. I think that it really does require you to really hone in on how can I better communicate with some of the relationships in my life. And for some of you guys, it's family, Jupiter in the 7th. It could also mean that you're trying to go back and forth with family because you're discussing travel plans, or you're discussing marriage or something that deals with like ceremonies. And that there can be something in the air about somebody getting married or somebody getting ready to plan travel around a graduation or some kind of significant family event. I would say that it'll enhance compassionate alliances. If this were me, I would be writing intuitive letters to loved ones, even if you do not send them. So if you don't have closure, with a family member, write all of your emotions and your feelings down, maybe put it in some salt water with a crystal and let it dissolve. This is also a time where if you're wanting, right, to meet somebody new, then you have to be willing to travel, or you have to be willing to get outside of your comfort zone, and you have to tell the universe, okay, I'm ready to meet this person. I'm ready to kind of connect with them. You're one of the signs that I would say be very careful with signing documents, with buying cars, with traveling, with moving. You can see some hiccups that can kind of happen here. And some of it is just unavoidable because there is this sense of trying to figure out where you're going. And then Saturn, your chart ruler, is going to meet with Neptune in your 4th house, where you're going to go, wait a second, I feel landlocked. Or, I want to move, but I have to stay. Or, there's something going on with family, so now I have to reconnect with another relative and kind of go back and forth with them in some capacity. Roll with the punches. It will be fine. Ultimately, some of the trines means that you may have a trusted family member, a therapist, an astrologer, a spouse, even somebody who can kind of help talk to you about just some of the things that are coming up for you emotionally and some of the delays, either with family, emotions, or your home zone. Good luck, Capricorn. For Aquarius and Aquarius rising, you guys are going to be experiencing Mercury dipping into Pisces in your natal second house. Now, the second house is all about money, values, and resources. It's about cash in hand, the things that you kind of hold and deem valuable. It's also going to be directly connected to the houses that Mercury rule, which is the 5th house, like creativity, self-expression, and children or dating, as well as the 8th house of intimacy, other people's money, secrets, and also things that can be, hidden or sensitive information. Now, for you guys to have Mercury going into your second house, it's pretty safe to say, your mind is going to be on your money. So something to kind of consider is that Mercury will be coming into pre-shadow here. So you're one of the signs that I would say, look, you got to make any big money moves or something, maybe wait. Okay, just take a breather. It is possible that you are contemplating, buying something of a luxury fashion, because Venus is there as well. And whether that's, property, real estate, if you are thinking about investing on something really big, if you're thinking about buying something really big, Mercury deals with debt. And when Mercury goes into your second house, it can mean that you're about to put a lot of money up because you're making an investment, or you're trying to, swipe a credit card and you're like, I'll pay for it over time. Don't count your chickens before they hatch. Think about what happened last spring if there was like some kind of financial plot twists that happened and some delays with resources. You guys have had to work hard for your money. I've seen a lot of Aquarius and Aquarius risings going through that with the North Node in Pisces. And now Saturn, one of your rulers, is going to leave. So one interpretation is that, with Mercury getting ready to go retrograde and meeting with Venus, you might go, no, now the money's coming in. Now I am traveling, right? Or I am booking a flight, or I am going to be going on a big trip. It can also mean that this is a time where there is just this major kind of refinement of realizing like where there are some kind of holes in the bucket, right, with your budget, or where you have maybe overlooked some issues that have been going on with, subscriptions that are still running and you didn't realize you had them, or, where you're spending money that you could actually be saving if you're just a little bit more aware. Likely this can be connected to entertainment, so like going to bars, going to restaurants. It can be gambling. It can also be where you're more willing to take risks with money financially because you feel like there's an opportunity for some big reward. Now, when I look at your guys' chart, that connection to the 8th house of intimacy and the 5th house of creativity makes me feel like you're rethinking your finances or your self-worth. And you just have to really watch for that kind of like, illusions when it comes to spending. The positive is that it is going to be trining Jupiter in your 6th house. And Jupiter deals explicitly with your friends, your community, your goals, and also your finances. So a lot of you guys are going to be investing more in your health. And that could be going to spas, new doctors, you're spending money on your pets, you're buying healthier food. It could also mean that it's about nurturing your routines, and that there can be just a sense of healthier kind of confidence and self-esteem that's coming in. Mercury retrogrades here are pretty notorious for changes with your eating habits. So it can mean that you're like, no, I'm moving away from eating sweets, or I'm maybe trying to kind of stop drinking as much, or maybe I'm trying to kind of, be more mindful about my emotional or kind of like, emotional spending. I also think that you guys will find that this is going to be a time that if you can budget with intuition and if you visualize prosperity, that can actually heal your daily habits and routines. And so I've said to some of my Aquarius and Aquarius risings, look, you want to feel excited about, focusing on your health, go and buy yourself a new jogging suit, go and buy some new sneakers, right? Get a pair of headphones, maybe treat yourself to, like going to a nice gym. These are things that are worth investing in. And it's not necessarily bad, but it's about how you feel about yourself when you've got retrogrades going on in the second house, and also about your resources. Your wealth is in your health, clearly, with some of these aspects. And there can be some reworking of work, also your schedule and some of your habits throughout this process. But I think that it's actually going to be really good for you. And there's some things that are worth kind of investing in because it'll better your health and your daily routine. There can also be a reevaluation or a reassessment of where you're working, who you're working with, and what you're getting paid. So that's definitely going to be a big theme throughout this transit for you guys. So kind of get into the flow of making some changes with your daily routine. And I think you guys are going to do just fine. Good luck. All right, Pisces, You're the star of the show. This is the last kind of bit for you to really kind of get your affairs in order. Obviously, Mercury going into your sign is going to be more about what you think, what you want, what you need, and being super in tune with your higher self. Do not let relationship drama, family drama get in the way of you receiving messages of needing to do what's best for you. All right? Because there's going to be a lot of people trying to influence you as you go through this particular period. And that's because Mercury rules the South Node and also the 7th house, where other people are going to be calling you, trying to connect with you, trying to reach out to you, coming back to you, trying to work things out. And that could also mean clients or family, because Mercury also rules your 4th house of home and past. So there's like this review that you're going to do of, you know, what's changed in relationships, what's changed at home. Maybe you're feeling like you're kind of in this kind of pivot point where you're contemplating or considering making some bigger changes in relationships, which may materialize with the Virgo eclipse next month in March. And Mercury in the 1st house is the house of self. So it's the self, the body. This is about re-examining your identity. This is also about kind of watching for foggy self-perception and some potential missed health signals. Emotional health, mental health, physical health. Pisces obviously is more about the feet. So it can be a time where you're like, okay, am I needing to check in with a therapist? Do I need to see a podiatrist? You know, like what's going on with my vision? Am I not seeing things so clearly? And I think that it's nice because if you're a single Pisces rising and you're looking for somebody might just show up. When Mercury retrogrades on your ascendant, you just meet somebody, right? They'll just walk right up to you. It could also mean that you're just attracting clients or attention or people to work with. It can also mean that naturally family is kind of reconnecting with you. So you don't really have to do anything, you just have to kind of be. Now, throughout this retrograde process, the pre-shadow, post-shadow, we'll see several trines to Jupiter, which is really lovely because that is your traditional ruler. So it's almost like you're being asked to kind of get exceptionally clear about what you want so you can call in more of that. And Jupiter is the sweetness, I think, when it's in Cancer. Do you want more fun? You want more romance, right? You want more opportunity to grow emotionally? Do you want to focus on your relationship with home, with family, with children? Really, the world is kind of like your oyster right now, Pisces. And you're being asked, I think, to get more creative with Jupiter retrograde in your 5th house. You're being asked to really boost joyful expression. So a lot of this is about mirroring your work, I think, with affirmations to really kind of embrace more of the expansive kind of creative essence that's really wanting to come through. You'll see after the eclipse and after the retrograde, as we're getting into the end of March, going into April, that it's go time. You're suddenly investing more in yourself. You're feeling more driven, more independent. You are going to have Jupiter that's going to be in the 5th house for some time. But I'm really looking forward to when Mercury's direct, you know, in March, and when it's starting to come into a trine with Jupiter again. I think that's going to be really good for you guys. I think that there's going to be more clarity about, do I launch the business? You know, do I get into the relationship? You know, am I ready to say I love you? Am I going to be having a kid? Like all of those things can kind of happen. And there can be some really great kind of creative births that can be happening at the same time. It lightens up a lot of the vibe of Mercury going retrograde in your sign. It also lightens up a lot of the Saturn-Neptune conjunction of you being like, am I going to have to do this alone? Don't worry so much about that. I think that really it's about just kind of knowing that if you follow your bliss, even though it's going to seem like that's leading you away from certain relationships or asking you to move to new locations, something in your soul is just telling you, you got to listen. So watch for those intuitive conversations that you're going to have with yourself. Woof. Well, that is the cosmic download on part 1 of Mercury going into Pisces. I always have a hard time doing these videos for whatever reason because it's not logical. So maybe that's part of it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please do give me a thumbs up and share this video. Consider subscribing to the channel. Remember, astrology is a tool that's here to empower us. So trust your intuition, stay bold. Let this whole process kind of move with you. And if this resonated with you, please do drop a comment below. Let me know what you're feeling, what manifests, what comes up for you, and how close to the target I was with this video. Go back and think about what happened during the last Mercury retrograde last spring and also the eclipse that we had last September, because something is kind of tying to that. Part 2 is going to drop soon, probably in a couple weeks. I'm going to be here live doing tarot readings tomorrow at 6 o'clock p.m. Central Time. That's 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern. what a great time to get a reading then with some of these transits in Pisces that are coming up. So if you have questions about, you know, what this means, you want more of kind of like an intuitive vibe, come and hang out with us on Friday night to get a reading. I'd love to see you guys there. Otherwise, for anything else, you can click the links below in the description. You can see all the dates about the stuff that I covered. And also you can see my website where if you guys want to book with me, I'm happy to either book one-on-one live session with you or be your astro teacher and coach. Check out my courses and my sessions on my website at beyondtheveiledtarot.com. Until next time, happy Mercury in Pisces, and I'm ready for this one. It's going to be Mr. Toad's wild ride, but we're going to come out the other side and things are going to make a heck of a lot more sense in the spring. So stay tuned, enjoy those wild dreams, and I'll see all of you guys back here very soon. Take care.